First off, if you're really into GCP and you want to keep up with what's going on there, Google published a new blog that is specific to database announcements. Once again, all of these links will be in the description of the video, so you'll have these resources available if you want to go look at them yourself. Um, but this blog, sums itself up pretty nicely to consolidate and provide comprehensive information. We're launching a new periodic blog series called the GCP or Google Cloud's Database Services, yada yada yada. So as I was looking through this, I discovered or saw like this AlloyDB for PostgreSQL announcement and then the AlloyDB Omni announcement. So this is really interesting. I didn't know that GCP was doing anything like this. Just so you're aware, like my background is mostly in AWS. I am very well aware of AWS services and, like feature set comparisons and things like that. So this really was very interesting to me because unless I'm mistaken, there is no analog to this, from an AWS perspective. I guess maybe the closest thing would be AWS Outpost, and I'm not even sure if they offer RDS on Outpost. I think they do, but the only things that I know of that are, deploy on your own infrastructure types of services from AWS are EKS Anywhere, ECS Anywhere, and, IAM roles anywhere. So those are, the technologies that they give you the access to go deploy these on your own infrastructure. Nothing in the data space. So this is actually really interesting. This was what really caught my attention, the AlloyDB Omni, and then I'm like, well, what is AlloyDB? Um, just kind of a quick scan of it, it led me to their documentation page. So just looking at this for PostgreSQL, my first kind of initial reaction to this was this is very much like Aurora, but it's actually maybe not as much like Aurora as I thought it was. There are some things about it that make me feel like it's kind of Aurora-ish. So like this right here, AlloyDB supports up to 64 TB storage per cluster in certain regions. So pretty sure the Aurora storage, well, let's just look it up. Pretty sure it's 64 TB too, but okay, I'm wrong. 128 TB. So a multiple of 64. I'm in the ballpark. Um, so there is a storage cap that is, like more data than I'll ever put in a database, but some people could potentially bump up against that maximum. So just to go look at the actual product page, this is where it got really interesting for me. AlloyDB for PostgreSQL is a fully managed PostgreSQL compatible database services that's designed for your most demanding workloads, including hybrid transactional analytical processing. AlloyDB pairs a Google-built database engine with a cloud-based multi-node architecture to deliver enterprise-grade performance, reliability, and availability. So to me, this sounds a lot like Aurora. Aurora is, depending on which engine you choose, an implementation of an Amazon-esque implementation of MySQL or PostgreSQL. Um, I don't really know what it actually is under the covers. I assume they have created a fork of, the upstream source code for those two database engines and integrated it into, basically the backplane of their infrastructure, like the hyperscale infrastructure that is AWS. So integrations with things like EBS storage, S3 storage, IAM, all those sorts of things that you couldn't do if you just took, a Postgres SQL database instance and tried to do that yourself. Like you'd have to write a lot of extra software. You'd have to do some magic with, integrating with EBS, like at the actual block level, like things like that. So Amazon's done all that for you. I assume that AlloyDB is very similar in its implementation, or at least we're giving you a Postgres wire compatible database, but we're also giving you a lot of the value add of our cloud platform and the integrations with it in basically a managed service. So they mention right here, using standard PostgreSQL protocols and techniques. So once again, wire compatible with PostgreSQL. You use PostgreSQL query syntax. So there's obviously some component of the actual PostgreSQL upstream source code, um, probably built into this. But from there, they've kind of taken and they've added their magic sauce to it. So they're going to take care of the scaling. They're going to take care of the underlying infrastructure. They're going to take care of communication between, replicas and things like that. So it's, it is a managed database service that is PostgreSQL compatible. The other thing that is really interesting here is they provide columnar database support out of the box. So if you want columnar database support with a Postgres compatible backend on AWS, you can't do that with Aurora. You have to use Redshift. So it's a completely different, it's not a switch that you can flip in an implementation of an Aurora cluster. It's a completely different service. It's a completely different service model. The features didn't live in one single service the way they live with AlloyDB. So it's a really interesting analog to something like Aurora and Redshift. Obviously, they've integrated this with their IAM controls and their encryption. It'd be, what would be the point if they hadn't? But this, like I said, like this is the thing that really just got me like I need to go look at this and I want to understand more about this. The self-hosted. So what does that look like? Um, let's take a look because I was looking, well, it's back on the blog page, but we'll just jump to the Omni overview page and read a little bit more about it. So key features, AlloyDB Omni includes a select subset of AlloyDB features, including the following. So obviously, once again, it's PostgreSQL compatible. An index advisor that helps you find opportunities to optimize your database schema using new indexes based on your usage pattern. So like this thing's got ML built into it. At least I would guess that's how they've implemented this, right? There is some like edge deployed ML model that actually watches like your query usage or talks to the query optimizer that comes with Postgres, and it makes recommendations on how to structure indexes in your database. So if you don't know a lot about databases, if you are like an application developer that hasn't done a lot of database tuning, like indexes are they're a poison pill. Not really. I mean, they're a double-edged sword. You can absolutely, you know, crush performance of your database with poorly optimized indexes or poorly chosen indexes, or by not indexing the right thing. So indexes are tricky, and like indexing and partitioning and storage and kind of all those underlying implementation details that you don't think of when you go write SQL queries and create tables and create schemas are the things that really let your application scale or create lots of headaches for you as you try to scale your application. Typically the province of database administrators, at least ones that really know what they're doing. um, Google has said like we're going to build this into it. So like that's really interesting. The columnar engine, also available here in Omni, which is I mean, like you can build your own data warehouse with this. Like this is just very interesting to me. Various other optimizations and enhancements over a stock PostgreSQL server, such as automatic memory management and adaptive auto vacuum of stale data. If you've ever had to manage a Postgres cluster, like these two words are like this is quite a value. Managing auto vacuum and things like that is not always pleasant in Postgres clusters. So the last part of this key features section says AlloyDB Omni does not include AlloyDB features that rely on operation within Google Cloud. Obviously, there's probably no integration with IAM. There's probably no integration with Google Key Management Service because guess what? If you deploy this on your own infrastructure, you can't use those things because you're not in that context. So that all makes sense. How it works. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, and maybe there's a link here that I kind of missed in the middle of this. So this is like the setup of all this thing, and you know, obviously you have to have a GCP account. They use service account credentials to deploy this on your own infrastructure, and it comes with its own CLI tool. So, the setup of it is fairly complicated. But interestingly, they have a Kubernetes operator. So if you really want to try this out and you have a development Kubernetes cluster, if you run Kubernetes in your own server estate, like your own personal Kubernetes server, interested enough in this to actually try it out, maybe I'll do that. If I do, I'll make a video just so you can kind of see what that looks like. So, the operator bit is that's pretty cool. So if you just want to give this thing a roll and you've got a Kubernetes cluster around, you can deploy it using an operator, which is super easy, right? Like it doesn't get much easier than installing the operator. And then I would assume that there is some custom resource that gets exposed by the operator. So you just create an instance of that object, um, apply a YAML spec, kube control apply, boom, you got yourself an AlloyDB cluster or AlloyDB instance running in your Kubernetes cluster, and that probably gets exposed as service and how stuff works in Kubernetes. So um, just a really interesting service. When I look at things from other cloud providers, I still have to translate them through AWS. So as I'm translating this, I'm thinking, this sounds a lot like, Aurora. This sounds somewhat like RDS. Like, are they really that similar? To me, this feels more like Aurora with like some extra magic and sauce added that Aurora doesn't have. I go back to like Cloud SQL being a pretty good analog to RDS. They even support the same things. Well, RDS supports some additional things like Oracle, and I can't remember if that's even supported in GCP. But the big ones for me are PostgreSQL and MySQL, and both of those are supported in RDS. They're both supported in Cloud SQL. So to me, that's kind of an analog of service between GCP and AWS. This feels kind of like an analog to Aurora, but there are obviously some differences. There is no, deploy an Aurora database anywhere in your own infrastructure capability there that AWS gives you. So this is really cool. It's something to take a look at. If you're at a point where you're starting a new project and you're using Postgres as a backend, like, consider this if you're a GCP customer. And, like, I don't know how long the service has been around. Perhaps you already are. If you are, leave a comment because I'd be really interested to understand like how many people are using this and what some of the value, especially around the index auto suggestion stuff really is. Because I mean, those types of things are, they're like a bullet point on the page, but like when you think about replacing a DBA with like some built-in ML magic, and a deploy anywhere service like that's quite a value to you as a customer, especially, if you're in a small startup where you can't afford to go hire a DBA until your next funding round. And even after your next funding round, you probably didn't plan for that. So those types of things are hard to overstate in terms of value. So if you're using this and you're using any of those features, like please reach out and let me know because I'd be really interested to understand like, how those features have impacted you if you see value in them. And like we can let other people know too, so that people understand like, hey, these services are available to you and here's the value in using them. So that's all. AlloyDB for GCP, AlloyDB Omni, run it anywhere, run it on your own laptop, run it on your own server. Super interesting. And we'll keep an eye on Google here and some of the other interesting data services that they have to offer. Thanks for checking this video out. Like, comment, subscribe, share if you found value in this. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you on the next one.